Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for what's going to be a great episode. Now, if you're enjoying this podcast, I need you to do me a favor. Take a minute and leave us a 5-star rating and review, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Now, today we have a very special guest. We're going to be talking to Keller Briscoe. Keller is the creator of the 5-minute success concept. She regularly speaks on a national and local level on the best of 5-minute success. Further, she is the host of the weekly 5-Minute Success podcast, which has an amazing array of guests who have achieved high success at very high levels in business and in life. Let's welcome to the show, Keller Briscoe.
Hey, John, and I'm thrilled to be doing this pod swap because I had the opportunity to interview you for 5-Minute Success, a high-achieving person and that you are. And so I'm thrilled to now turn the tables.
Absolutely. It's so good to kind of switch the, sit in the other side of the seats, right, after talking to you on your show. And if you haven't listened to 5-Minute Success, definitely make sure you subscribe to that podcast as well. A lot of great information. I love the platform too, the way you kind of really keep the ideologies and the concepts really tight within that 5-minute window before kind of switching gears. Let's start there since we're talking about it, right? How did you land on this notion of 5-minute success, and what is the impact and the importance of 5 minutes there?
So, as often happens when people achieve a high-level success, a high-producing mega agent, consistently in the top 100 out of 180,000 agents in my company and named to the Wall Street Journal top agent list. So when that happens, and the circumstances that it happened, we can delve into that a little bit more later, but often people want to know, how do you do it? So I kept getting asked for coaching and training, and I encourage people to work on their personal and their business development and to read. And I invariably hit the roadblock of they didn't have enough time. So to break that barrier, I was like, well, do you have 5 minutes? And everybody has 5 minutes. And so that is where the idea came from. Now I'm really deeply involved in habit formation and time, and the whole idea of time being a created thing. When people say they don't have enough time, like Lazu said, that really effectively means that they don't want to. So breaking through those barriers has also become kind of one of my passions. But that's where it all started. Then the idea of the book, again, many people had said, Karen, you should write a book. You have great stories. You provide great inspiration and information, which is kind of a key fundamental to the way I teach and coach people, is that information is often can be dry and boring and very heavy. And inspiration can have an impact and powerful, but sometimes it's a little too sweet, a little too not enough substance. And so this combination of the information and inspiration together in these 5-minute segments. And what I found is the impact that can have, because anything people repeatedly do, excellence is really habit in many situations. So what they repeatedly do, the benefit of doing 5 minutes a day is that you're more likely to remember it when you need the concept, because many books and trainings are almost tsunami-like, right? It's too much information or too much inspiration. I'm sure you've been to those seminars, right? Or you come back and nothing changes. So change, it can often be more impactful if it's in small doses. And that's where this 5-minute success has just evolved from that.
No, I love that. Karen, you talked about a few different things right there, and I started taking some notes, but it's very interesting listening to how it came to be, as you're talking to people and everyone's busy. That's an excuse I think everyone has.
Oh, it's a chronic illness right now.
It's such a chronic illness, right? And the reality is that when we look at our time, there are absolutely slots in our schedule where we can create time. So I love the fact that you've gone kind of the 5-minute route to say, listen, take 5 minutes. here's some things that you can do within 5 minutes that can help you progress and move forward and move towards the life that you say you want. And I think those are really important aspects to kind of make sure you're taking that progression. You started to
Yes.
talk about
Go ahead.
you started talking about the success you've had as a real estate agent, top 100 out of 180,000 agents across the country. I do want to make sure we talk about that because that's ridiculously impressive. And obviously to do that continually, you've had to do some things consistently to build up your own processes, your own systems, and make sure that you are taking the right actions every day. Can you talk to us a little bit more about kind of the mindset of, the 5 minute success and some of the challenges and that other people were facing, as well as how you kind of landed as the top agent consistently year after year?
Yes, I do say that's the difference between the one-hit wonder and the one that can do it over and over again is the definition of a professional, in my view. I mean, just look at musicians and other top performers, right? So you hear once and they're gone. That means they probably did not have a sustainable, successful model. And that's one of the benefits, the beautiful things about the 5-minute success is it is a model. And so even though I wrote the book as a daily reader so that I could break through this barrier of people saying they didn't have enough time. But also there's another phenomenon that I've discovered in salespeople, entrepreneurs, real estate agents, they all kind of tend to have the same shiny object squirrel phenomenon where they're like, oh, he's off to the next thing, right? Instead of getting some substance and some consistency. So the 5-minute success principles are, and you know them because we did them yesterday in the podcast. The first thing is commit to get leads. Everybody in every profession, practically that I've talked to, have a need to get leads. Business development, prospecting, and different people call it different things. Like, for example, your church will probably call it evangelism. Maybe your dentist will, call it, patient care, that kind of thing. But if you don't have a lead, you really have nothing to do. It could be attraction marketing, could be the way you do your business development lead generation, but it could also be active. It could be, feet on the street prospecting or, phone prospecting, whatever it is your best method. The idea is, everybody does it and has to do it continuously. And that, if you want to know the number one key to my success over these years has been how consistent I am. I'm pretty routine. I have made that into a habit formation. So then the next one is consult to sell. So there are people in situations where you have a lead, you have a customer, your client. Well, every situation, in order to turn into a transaction, you have to either convert them or consult to provide some level of service. There's a transaction at the end. In real estate, our transaction is helping people buy and sell homes. But, as a marketing consultant, it's to come up with a social media campaign and to implement it. And so you attract or you obtain that customer client, you still have to do something with them. Dentists clean their teeth, churches have programs or worship services. So nonprofits, everybody does something that then creates the value for the customer client so that there's a transaction at the end. What often happens in not just sales, but entrepreneurship, even churches, dentists, if they get stuck on a hamster wheel of only as good as their next deal, so that it's just like they're pretty much go out of business as soon as they stop lead generating, right? So the idea is to build systems, leverage, scale, to create an ongoing sustainable enterprise. And I call that connect, build, and grow. So you're connecting the different facets, the people of the operation so that you can build and grow something because everything is in a state of deterioration. If you're not actively doing something about it, your doors are going to close, right? And then I find that in the people that are high achievers, they all have some format of mindset or motivation principles that they follow. And I call that success thinking, activities, and vision. So oftentimes the vision comes first. You have an idea of where you want to go. You think about how to do it, use affirmations. Then the action is required because there's some school of thought that you could affirm your way to success. I still think it requires some action. So I think you still got to pick up the phone. So that those all are key to the achieving success. And then all of that comes together as the sweet spot of success. So those fundamentals actually came to me on the back of a napkin because my publisher said, well, okay, this is all great and good. A lot of, 365 great stories of inspiration, information, but there's got to be something that holds it all together. And I was like, well, this is it. And the really powerful thing is I'm at about 250 episodes on my podcast, interviewed entrepreneurs, salespeople, ministers, people in nonprofits, people in all areas, lots of real estate, but in all areas. And really, truly, they all do those things.
No, I love it. You just nailed a few really great points. I want to recap it for those who are not taking notes. But the first one was committing to get leads. The second was consult to sell. After that, you had connect, build, and grow. And then success thinking, acting, and
activities.
Vision.
Yeah.
Activities and vision. And to your point, whether you are, a dentist or real estate agent, whatever, these principles, they're true for any business, for anything where you're looking to gain clients or patients. These steps are really true. And I think anyone listening to this right now, even as investors, I think this is a really, really smart thing to be following, because if you're not getting the deal flow, or you're not, your business as an entrepreneur, you're not seeing the results you want, there's something in these steps that you probably need to tweak. Whether that's the systems that you set up or the initial leads that you have coming in, but there's something in there that you need to adjust. How do you, when you talk to, whether it be, some of your clients or other folks who ask you for assistance, how do you go about identifying where those weak elements are in this system or in this process?
It's fascinating, but it's almost always the lead generation. Because if you have an overflow of business, a lot of things seem to work themselves out. I find that that's usually where the funnel stops, or the pipeline is the most problematic for people, is that they are good at the other functions, but they're not so much the other way. There is some people that I found have a kind of fear of success element, and they're afraid they're going to get too busy and they're going to be too successful. They won't know how to do it. And that's where the connect, to build, and grow comes in. But what I found is if people achieve a high level of success in their business development, their lead generation, usually they get smart enough by the time they really need systems and leverage and scale. And they also have the momentum going for them. It's the starting the momentum that is the hardest thing I found.
Yeah, that's it. So really that lead generation, getting those leads in up front, that's really the key. Because to your point, if you're a doctor or a dentist, you can always hire more people, right? You don't really have to spend a whole lot of time figuring out how in the world you're going to see more patients. You're either going to, get a bigger space, hire more doctors, hire a nurse, hire a receptionist, whatever the case may be. There's some fairly easy handles you can pull, some levers that you can pull to address some of those things. But really the lead generation, or getting those leads in, that's going to be the hardest part for most people. I want to go back to the success you've had, right? So we've talked about top 100 agent out of all the agents in the country. Obviously, from a lead standpoint, you're doing something that was remarkable to be able to hit those numbers. Can you share maybe some of the things or some of the insights that helped you achieve such success systematically and do it year over year over year?
So that's the reason why I call it commit, because it's a commitment. It's not a feeling. I get up every morning and business day. I've set my schedule, and I've done this again consistently since 2002 when I became a residential real estate agent. And I consistently lead generate every single day. And I follow what I call activity blocking. Now, there are many people that advocate for time blocking. The thing is I've become kind of a time nerd and expert. And what happens with time is it's an unrenewable resource, right? So once that time passes, it's gone. And we had our daughter, when she was in elementary school, she had learning disabilities, and we would take her to tutors. It cost a lot of money, and the hour would be up, and she would come out and it's like, have you done your homework? And invariably she hadn't. And I'm like, okay, that's the point, right? I mean, the point is to do your homework. And so when that's done, then you get to come home. And so I finally found a tutor that operated that way. So all the strategies for not doing the work weren't effective anymore, right? Because she was going to stay till she did it. So that's the principle of activity blocking. You determine the number of activities per what I call working day. So like I just came back from snow skiing. I was not working. That does mean that to take the days off, I do a lot of what I call front loading and backfilling. I'm a big front loader, so I work ahead, and then I build a space for me to be able to take off. And so I have determined for my business level, and even at 100 million in sales, it's still 5 a day. If you have 5 meaningful conversations with people every day, then it has so much more impact than what often happens is that people are like, they get busy, they stop, and then they create what I call the roller coaster, right? So you get a deal, you get really busy, you get to the top, and then you go to closing or whatever it is your transactional type of business is, and then you freak out and you go, oh my God, I got to go lead generate again. And then you do that while you're down at the bottom of the pit of the roller coaster, and that high takes you back up because you have a deal, but then you stop lead generating. So the habit formation of every day is very important. I'm sure you've heard the famous story about, and I'm going to blank on his name, but the guy who wrote the jokes. And someone asked him how.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Jerry Seinfeld. Yes.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld. That's it.
Yes.
So Jerry Seinfeld, this is a Jerry Seinfeld principle. And if you want to start doing this today, I have a calendar on the 5 Minute Success website called the 66-Day Challenge. There's a lot of research on habit formation. 66 days comes from Charles Duhigg, the habit loop. The idea that what happens the first 21 days, many times people are very evangelistic about a new habit, like, okay, around the new year, right? Or think about the person who says, I'm going to start a Whole30, new diet, or I get a Peloton or whatever. There's a lot of evangelism around the first 21 days.
Mm-hmm.
The next 21 days, people often start to evaluate, okay, really? I'm going to do this every day. Why can't I go out and have, a big steak or whatever? And so that is really a key time in the habit formation process, because the habits that you decide for yourself that are going to benefit you in the long run, power through those. I mean, it's like the dip, right? That Seth Godin talks about. Power through it, because what you want to do is you want to get to the next 21 days. And that's where you start to experience the benefits of the habit. And this is out of James Clear, Atomic Habits. I talked with him, and he said that really, truly, any habit formation that you want for your life, it's not like you're going to stop after 66 days or after any time period, right? I mean, you want to become the type of person that lead generates every day. And once you have made that as part of your identity, then it's like what's called automaticity. So you don't have to think about it anymore. When you don't think about it anymore, then it's going to have probably the most impact. So whatever time period that is for you, but most people it's 66 days. That's why I started the 66 or have the 66-day calendar and the Commit to Get Lead 66 days, because that often jumpstarts people into that practice.
Phenomenal tips there. And I love all the points. For our listeners who listen to the show frequently, I'm a big James Clear fan of Atomic Habits. And, that Jerry Seinfeld quote you mentioned, he talks about breaking the chain, right? And for him, it was writing a joke every day. For you and for many of us, it's prospecting every day. Are there 5 people we can reach out to, or whatever it is for your business or whatever specifically you're trying to do? But what can you do every day that is a habit that you can go ahead and just make it a part of your ritual, your routine? It's part of who you are. It's part of the identity that you want to build. And if you can do that, you will now create a consistent flow, and you'll start to become the kind of person that you want to be. I used a couple of tricks, to your point, to help me. One is the calendar thing, where literally you can, put an X on a day and figure out whatever that goal is or whatever that activity you want to do. you just write it down, right? You kind of force yourself to see it. So my calendar, you can't see it, but right under this computer, my calendar is right here. So I'm actually writing notes
And
on
you
my
use a paper calendar? I do too. Yeah.
I use a
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how low tech I am. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And when it's full, it's very freeing too. This is the part where I feel like I really want people to embrace how powerful this is for your life. Because say you're going to lead generate for 2 hours a day or whatever, there really isn't any way to track or accountability, self-accountability. Then you're like, well, you could work all the time, right? So I find it very freeing, and you'll be able to track and see if you achieve the level of success you want with that level of activity. If it's not working for you, you can adjust. And there have been times where I've done a power boost of 90 days, 10 a day or whatever, when I really wanted to jumpstart my business. So, but tracking, you'll be so much more impactful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think making it obvious, that's another thing James always talks about, is make it obvious. And what I found for me was, I have a journal, I have different things like that. But, when I walk in, the first thing I see is this calendar, right? I can't ignore it. So it kind of makes it just a little bit easier to say, all right, well, you clearly didn't do it. He talks about, like a jar as well, and just maybe taking like pins or jelly beans or whatever, and putting 2 jars, and every time you make a call or do something, you take one and put in the other.
Yeah,
but
I've heard of that.
I think
too.
Just making it, to your point, just finding ways to make these habits really a part of who you are, and making it easy is a great way to really start to adjust and become that powerhouse, that you've been able to become from being very consistent in the steps that you've taken. Talk to me more about, what was the process like writing the book? Right, you started talking about you kind of came up with the concepts on the back of a napkin, but what is that process really like to go from, hey, I've had all this success, how do I now take it out of my head and kind of the things that I was just doing with activities, to now, putting it in a package that other folks can now read and then figure out how they can emulate that success?
So I had been writing a blog. I started in 2009, back when blogs were kind of the new thing to do. And I did achieve some success pretty rapidly, being picked up on some realtor sites, and had quite a bit of readership. So I had the blogs, and my first idea was to just put the blogs together. I realized that wasn't going to be enough. And so then I had to establish the habit. And it's fascinating. I know that one of your questions in the lightning round, so I don't know if I should share it now, but one of my biggest failures was that I kept believing that I didn't have enough time or money to write a book. And I was and met with a coach, and you're smiling. I met with a coach, and she had encouraged me to join this coaching group. And it was not really a business coaching group, it was more personal development. And we, after about 9 months, went on this retreat. And one of the activities we did was to each of us get up and share what was stopping us from doing what we said we wanted to do. And I had this epiphany that the only one stopping me was me. I mean, I'm self-employed. I am perfectly capable of writing a book if I decide I want to write a book, right? It's back to time is a created thing. If I say I don't have enough time, that means I'm saying I don't want to. So what is stopping me? So the second big epiphany I had was, there's a Gretchen Rubin, who's another habit researcher, or not researcher, but she writes a lot about habits. And she had written a book called Better Than Before. And people she had talked to about, okay, what it is you want to achieve in your life, what would be better for you. And she discovered this same phenomenon. So many people said over and over again, not enough time or money. So she wrote another habit, a book that was really more about habits. And I read that book on an airplane. And one of the habit hacks is, at daylight savings time, when you fall back in the fall, you gain an hour. And literally, this is like going to be the next week. And I'm like, okay, so I guess I'm supposed to get up an hour early. And it's not technically getting up an hour earlier because your body clock's already there. You could do this too, like when you're traveling. You could create this hack on your own. So don't wait till daylight savings time. You can do it now. So I'm a self-professed non-morning person, but I decided that if I said I wanted to write a book and the only person stopping me was me, then I was going to have to change something about me. And I decided to change the way I looked at time in the morning. And so that's a quote by Wayne Dyer, by the way. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. So I started a morning routine of getting up and writing. And that is a very classic, that's like one of the first things any writer will tell you is if you want to write a book, get up and, time and that they usually say time and seat or number of words, not to be about the perfectionism of it. And then I set about talking to everybody I knew who had ever written a book. And that, is really, really very powerful. I could say that about anything, really, truly, but this one particular example. And they gave me so much wisdom and insights, and I've learned a lot since then. Now that I have 3, I've learned a lot more, but it got me started. And then I had an urgency epiphany. So I had like 3 epiphanies right in a row. The urgency epiphany came out of the book, The Big Magic, with Elizabeth Gilbert. She wrote Eat, Pray, Love. And she talks about how in the universe there are ideas, and that if they come to you, then it's yours if you act on it. If you don't act on it and the idea's time had come to be present, then it's going to go to someone else. And I know you've had this happen because I've had ideas, I had inventions that I didn't act on, and then I saw them happen. And then I was like, okay, missed that one. So I decided I wasn't going to miss this one. I'd been given this epiphany that the time had come for people to recognize that they can achieve success at a higher level by investing 5 minutes a day. And I wanted to get that concept out in the world. And so I had enough urgency to get myself up in the morning to write. And then that led to so many other things, but that's the basic story of how the book came about.
You just gave us a lot of great nuggets there, really about, changing the way we look at time. And I love the little tidbit on, daylight savings time. That's a really good tip. Instead of just changing your sleep patterns based on the time change, just stick with it. It's a relatively, at least it seems like an easier one to adopt. Yeah. It just takes a little bit of time to just stick with it, and you don't have to worry about changing your body and changing your habits and all that. So that's really good tips there. So Karen, we've talked about the 3 books, what it was like to get those 3 books written, and really reshaping your calendar and really reshaping the way you think about time. You talked about activities versus time blocking, or activity blocking versus time blocking earlier. When you do the activity blocking, what are some of the challenges that you face? Because it seems like, I think for our listeners, or many folks who maybe they don't control their entire calendar, one of the concerns is, well, I only have so much time to commit to this before I need to either get the kids ready or go to work or whatever the case may be. So how do you try to make that transition to activity blocking, knowing that there are some kind of hardwired time stops that you have to adhere to as well?
Well, start small and build up. That is a proven method of habit formation. You'll have a lot of benefit by starting. I think that people spend a lot of energy thinking about how not to do things. And for one thing, you will finally be true to yourself, authentic to yourself, right? So if it's something you've been saying you wanted to do and you haven't done it, then by starting, you will feel that energy, because it really is energy. It's not time. That's the fundamental currency of high performance. And so the idea is to build the energy, and you can do it in small, bite-sized chunks, the 5-minute chunks. What I find is, for myself and many other people, is that once you start experiencing the benefits of it, you will want to do more. And it can have several different ways of having an impact. It can have a ripple impact. What I found for me is the more I was authentic to myself and what I was created to do, and then the people around me's lives improved, and they're like happier. They're like, let's do more of this. Let's get Karen happier because life is better. And it can also have a domino effect. I'm sure you've heard the one thing, what's the one thing you can do, such by doing that, everything else becomes easier and necessary. I promise you, if you do the one thing that you want to do, a lot of other things will become easier or unnecessary. It's the putting off doing the one thing is what holds more people back. And you could also have the snowball effect. You could start to build on it. So there's so much benefit to just starting. And if I could do it, you can too. So if 5 minutes literally is it, then do the 5 minutes, but do it consistently for a while. You'll start to figure it out. It'll start to come to you. I find that if you open yourself up for it, then it will come to you.
It's great advice there. 5 minutes is all it takes to really get started, and getting started is more important than thinking about all the reasons you can't do it. So if you have 5 minutes, I mean, just going back to the writing a book, if you could write one page or one paragraph a day, you're probably better off just getting up, writing that paragraph than just telling yourself, I don't have time to write a book.
Oh, people have written books that way. Trust me, one paragraph a day. I mean, really, truly, I'm not giving you any secrets here. This is true.
Yeah. So that's exactly it, right? So I think part of it is for us and our listeners is, get out of your own head. Stop thinking so much about what could happen or the challenges that you face. Just find a way to get started. 5 minutes, if that's what you have, take it and get started. And that's a great way to start building the habits and kind of creating the life that you really want to see. Karen, I want to move on to our bullseye round. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, Karen, earlier you started to talk about your failure. So what's a failure that has set you up for later success?
Well, I did share the one about what was holding me back was me. And this is a similar kind of story, but in a different genre. So I used to have a pretty significant fear of heights. And I went with my daughter to Costa Rica and we were ziplining. And apparently I was spending the entire time having this negative conversation I didn't realize out loud. I thought it was just in my head about doing the engineering math about, okay, so how much weight can this line hold and these platform hold and all these people and, all the things that could go wrong. And there was this guy behind me and I didn't know him other than he was in our tour group. And afterwards he said, so I just want to point out an observation. You spent the entire time thinking about how, all the things that could go wrong. And here we are in Costa Rica, in this beautiful place. You decided to go, so why not decide to have fun? And I was like, that is really powerful. So later on, I've had other opportunities in my life where I could be having a panic attack, and I chose otherwise. So now, almost 10 years later, in Switzerland with my daughter, we decided to go paragliding, and we're all geared up, and my person who was my instructor, or the person who was doing the professional in the pair, the wind shifted. And so we're standing there for what seemed like a long time, probably was just a minute, but it seemed like a long time because you're just standing there. And I was like, well, what do we do now? And he says, we're going to wait for the wind to shift. And I had this just moment of clarity that I could have a panic attack right then. Or I could be totally present and excited that I was about ready to go paragliding with my daughter in Switzerland. And I chose that. And it was so awesome. So what I back to the Wayne Dyer quote, the times where I feel this failure coming on, or this experience of panic or dread or concern or scared, I change the way I look at it. And I find that when I do that, then the things I look at change. And that's really been one of my really key to success in life, but it works in business too.
All right. What is the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year?
Well, so I probably gift the most my books, and I know we're going to talk about that. But the one book that I gift it's not my book, is Hal Elrod, Miracle Morning. And I know we're going to talk about routines, and we could talk about that then. But when I started on the journey of writing my first book, Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day, and I told you I started talking to everybody I knew had written a book. A friend of Hal's, Pat Hyben, who's written a real estate book and has a real estate podcast, said, you should talk to my friend Hal Elrod. And that, I could just tell you dozens of ways that's impacted my life. So I find the reason why is because it's habit formation. When I and many people, millions of people have started the Miracle Morning, set up that morning routine, it has a huge impact on the rest of your life.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
So this isn't technically a business resource, but it does. I think personal development is your best resource. I think you are your best investment, so invest in yourself. The 5-minute journal, I wish I'd invented it. I did not, but I was recommended to that by Hal Elrod as part of the Miracle Morning Routine. And I use the digital version because it provides a place for you to upload a photo of every day. And this just chronicling of my life, just like scanning down the memories, it's just like it gives you those little snapshots. So, but it also has a gratitude piece, that it has an opportunity to reflect at the end of the day on what you might want to do differently or change. So it's very powerful.
Do you take a new photo, or do you just grab one that's already in your camera scroll?
Yeah, it's usually in my camera scroll, but every once in a while I'll, not have something that just really is for the days. But oftentimes also I'll go back and reflect on some of the photos and I'll go, yes, this is the one I want to remember. So it's kind of has several benefits.
All right, so let's stick to that topic. What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
So the Miracle Morning, if your listeners are not familiar with it, I'll run through it real quickly. So it follows the acronym SAVERS to make it easy to remember. So S is for silence or meditation, A is for affirmations, V, visualization, E, exercise, R, reading, and S, scribing or journaling. And back to many people say, I don't have enough time for all of that. I'm like, well, Hal has 1 minute a day, which actually comes to 6 minutes because there's 6 in the SAVERS. But the idea is, please, whatever amount you can do is still going to have an impact, and it's the consistency of doing it.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
I wish I knew I was going to be so successful. I spent a lot of energy, wasted a lot of energy, my husband would say, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. It's back to what happened in Costa Rica. I am a naturally analytical person. My background, math, business. I came out of commercial real estate. I have really, those are my strengths, but they also can be the weaknesses because I can get into this analysis paralysis. Instead of looking at the ways things could work out, I almost feel like in some ways I need success by my drive. My drive powered through all that. I'm a very driven person as well. But boy, I wish I would have known I was going to be the successful. I would have enjoyed it more along the way.
Yeah, to enjoy the journey more as opposed to worrying so much about what could go wrong on the journey. Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew just 12 months ago?
So the one thing that's happened over the last year is I've launched a couple of endeavors, and I guess what I wish I would have known 12 months ago is I wish I would have done it sooner. Is the only thing I can say. And I'm at 60, so all of y'all are out there, whatever age you are, start today. That is really my only the one thing I want to live a life of no regrets. And so the two things I started this past year wrote the book Flip Time, Love Life, which is based on the idea of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you're supposed to work your way up the pyramid with your basic needs, physical needs, and then self-esteem, and then you can do self-actualization. Well, what I've come to the conclusion is flip the pyramid and start with self-actualization. And I wish I would have done more of that in my life.
What advice would you give to a smart-driven college student about the real world?
So the best investment is yourself. And even that comes from Warren Buffett, that there's a quote by him, ultimately there's one investment that supersedes all others, invest in yourself. And you can look at investing in yourself in your personal development, in your intellectual development, in your physical self, in your relationship. Invest in that because it is your greatest asset. My ability to earn and create and contribute and add value is worth more than every other asset class I own. If you think about it.
No, great tips there. I love that. Invest in yourself. sorry, I want to dig on that one just a little bit more, right? So for that student in college right now, thinking about investing in themselves, what are some ways, right? Because financially, they're not in a position to hire mentors and some of those things probably, but obviously they can read and listen to podcasts and other things like that. What are some things that you think they should absolutely be doing at this moment to prepare themselves to invest in themselves for what may happen next?
As you mentioned, I mean, there's so much available. In fact, if anything, it's probably tsunami, right? I mean, in this day and age, I mean, when I was in college, we didn't have the level of resources that we have now. So I definitely include investing in yourself, your physical self, because it seems like when you're young that you can, you're going to live forever, and your body is your only place you get to live. So I know that it's tempting to just not think about that, that you can think about that later. But I would say, so even that, the health of investing in your health, but reading podcasts, and you say mentors, I love young adults. I have had a number of students that have interned with us over the summer. 2 of them work for us now. So that if you're like thinking that there's a field or profession that you're interested in, I find that many people want to invest in the next generation. And so you may have a lot more opportunity than you're realizing. I think that what young people offer is energy. They offer a technology, knowledge, skills that people on the other end of the life really appreciate. And so I think you do have a lot to offer. So I would find ways to make those contacts and connections, and I think that you start there and you'll start to see the next thing. I think it was Martin Luther King who said that, many people, they don't start up the staircase because they want to see the whole thing. You don't have to see the whole thing. You can just see the next step and take that one.
There you go. What are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about what my next is, because I've had, in the last 3 years since I started this journey for personal development, it's been just phenomenal. And yet at this point in time, I'm not seeing what my next is. So I'm being very open to it appearing to me, because back to the big magic, it's probably coming, and I just want to be curious about it.
So I know that you are in the DC area, right? Like somewhere out that way? Okay. Give me the best place to grab a bite in your area.
So the DC metro region, I'm in the Northern Virginia side. Just think Amazon HQ2. That's where they came. I live in McLean, which is where the CIA is. And we have a local Mexican restaurant called LTO. And my husband and I are from Texas, and so we really like our Mexican food and our margaritas. So stop at LTO.
LTO sounds like a lovely place. All right, Karen, for our listeners who want to get in touch, maybe check out 5 Minute Success. What is the best way to get in touch with you? And can you also let us know of the 3 books that you've authored so we can link to those?
Absolutely. So it's easy because it's the number 5 Minute Success. The website, you can sign up and you'll get more value add things from the podcast and when we have other things that are coming out. And the Facebook, you can do the group or the page, and Instagram. And for the books, Amazon is where most people get their books these days. Although if you want to buy bulk, just reach out to me. I could do that as well. So Real Estate Success in 5 Minutes a Day. That's the original book. Commit to Get Leads 66-Day Challenge. That's going to give you a jump start on the business development prospecting if that's what you want to focus on. And then Flip Time, Love Life. That's about putting self-actualization first in your life and how to do that. And it's told in a story format. So like many heroines and hero stories are told like with a character. That's what that type of book is. And then I have one other thing that I have started in the last year that I would love your listeners to connect on. And that is the 80 by 80 movement. So when I mentioned to you about physical health, I did not grow up in a family that valued that. And I have always been active, but I had never been really competed in anything. So at 59, my son's friends talked me into doing a sprint triathlon. And I placed the fastest in my age group. So it's kind of cool. And then I was
Congratulations, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so I hadn't trained or anything. And so I was like, oh, wow. And somebody said, well, you're going to do more of these. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be the person that does 80 by 80. So do 80, and I call it movement because you could do medals like your triathlons or your events, or you could do what I call milestones. So like I hiked Machu Picchu with my son. I've, gone surfing in San Sebastian with my daughter, these milestone movement kind of events. So it's at the website, the number 80x80 movement. And I'm sure you'll put that in the show notes. You could go there and register, and you can include a photo of and it'll keep track for you, so that the idea is to complete 80 of them by the time you turn 80.
No, that's lovely. I love that. So you have like this community now of people who are committed to creating 80 activities before turning 80 years old. That's great. That's great. Well, Karen, this has been a lot of fun talking to you. You gave us a lot of great information on how you've had great success in your career, why 5 minutes a day is really all it takes to start on that pathway of being successful, and then also how we can rethink time, thinking about either activity blocking versus time blocking for those folks who are doing neither to start doing one of them, but to really start prioritizing how we can bring in leads in our business on a daily basis to grow and to prosper. Karen, thank you again for coming on Target Market Insights. We look forward to staying in touch.
Yes, let's do that.